It's absolutely hilarious. Live from Houston, Texas. Welcome everyone to a silly Monday episode of What Makes You Tick. I'm really excited that you're here for number 28. And I apologize right off the bat. We had some technical issues and I'm not the technician, although that's what part of my speech is going to be. But we figured it out and we're on. And whether you see us live or not, we will post this. So please watch. But before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes to make this a great experience for everyone. Today, I have an amazing guest and I'm excited for you to connect with this lady. But first, look, this is an interactive live session. It's live and it's Monday. I know it's 5:10 and I know we're running late and it's Christmas and whatever. This is a great Christmas present. So if we have any questions, please drop them in and just ask. We'll see what we can do. We'll use LinkedIn DMs for the comment section on the events posting for any behind the scenes coordination, which I'm experienced now in since we're delayed. So feel free to drop the message. If you get disconnected, simply rejoin because LinkedIn will do this from time to time. And we know that many of you are listening while communicating or working. Look, participate however you can. Even quiet listeners are fantastic. Thanks for being here. Now, let's get started. My guest today is a connector in the truest sense of the word, the kind of person who can turn a single conversation into a movement or a podcast into a platform. She relates on the fly. She tells stories that stick. She has energy that makes you feel, which is one of the reasons I brought her on. Anything is possible once she turns on the mic. If you ever wonder how the right conversation finds the right audience, you're about to meet the reason. She started at radio at Purdue, fell in love with the conversation that actually matters, and launched Better Call Daddy in 2019. Built on her dad's wisdom and a belief of a story can change people. We met through Cup of Joey, and look, I quickly realized that she does not open doors. She kicks them in. Helping land a podcast by snagging sponsorship or turning your story into something that's worth telling. She's a proud LinkedIn-aholic, a community builder at heart, and someone whose strength, activator, communications, positivity, empathy shows up in every room she enters. My guest is here to share insights as we discover what makes Reena Watts tick. Reena, it's awesome to finally be on.
We did it. I love it.
I know. Look, give the listeners some insight to what makes you tick.
Thank you so much. What makes me tick is authenticity, realness, a little human error, because then you're talking to somebody real. And we got to experience that together right before this. So thank you for letting me know that you're a real one.
No, I'm absolutely, look, I'm real. And we couldn't, just for those listeners, a little background, we logged on and we've been sitting here for about 25 minutes trying to figure this thing out. And for some reason I could see her going through and we were both communicating, but I couldn't hear her. And then I clicked the button. Literally, I still, honestly, I think it was just my sound for some reason on my computer was muted or on the wrong setting. And it's crazy, but we're here. So let's get on. Look, tell us a little bit about what makes you tick. What makes you go?
I love a good story and I seem to have them find me wherever I go. So, hey, there's Tori Raspberry. It's funny. Once you tell people that you worked at the Jerry Springer show, then those stories just endlessly come your way. And so that's where I got my start.
Wait, you started on the Jerry Springer?
After the NPR radio station stint, I drove up to Chicago. I was going to interview it. I actually did interview at WGN and wanted to work in radio, but I didn't get that gig. And I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for interns on the same trip. So I walked across to NBC Courtyard from WGN and I ended up starting there as an intern and 8 months later became a producer. So I went from intern to associate producer to producer in about 8 months. And I ended up staying on that show for couple years, and that's how I got my start in the television industry.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Because it's been a while since we talked and I was going to use the first 15 minutes to kind of revisit. So look, you talk about real, like people, you're seeing absolute reality because we haven't prepped for any of this stuff. So, and yes,
Tori's like, you didn't know that? Everybody likes to talk about that.
I know I'm the radio host, so let me play it up a little bit here. No. Okay. So after that, what did you do? How did you get deeper and how did you get here?
Oh my God. Well, there's a lot of winding roads until I got to Texas. But yeah, I was on that show for about 2.5 years. And like I said, that is kind of where my love for storytelling began because as you can imagine, I got to hear lots of stories that will raise an eyebrow or two.
Okay. Give me one. Share one story, one of your favorites.
Oh, one of my favorites. I think, I mean, God, there's so many. You know, my first show, I actually just looked at this recently because there's a documentary about me coming out soon, actually in 2026. But my very first script was a girl who was married. She had a couple kids and she went back to school like mid-career and she went to beauty school. And there was a guy in her beauty school class that changed her life forever. You know, love triangle began there, but he did like funny things to like make her laugh and to woo her. And yeah, so that was a crazy one.
Wow. And how did you guys find these people? Because I remember Jerry Springer. And some of our audience may or may not, but I remember how did you find them? Or how did you find these guys?
They find us 1-800-96-Jerry. We had hundreds of calls a day. Yeah.
Really?
So I worked there pre-internet. Now I feel like casting would be a lot easier.
Oh, gosh.
Because the amount of internet leads, I remember when the internet leads started coming in, I was like, are we actually going to get any stories this way? Like, I still kept some of those. Like, you know, we would be like, you know, email this producer for a love triangle, you know, and email this producer if you know you're a prostitute, interview this one if you're a transsexual. It was like same thing as calling in, you know what I mean? It was like each producer had their specialty. I kind of stuck to like the love triangles because that was the bread and butter of the show. Like 90% of the stories were that. Yeah. And you don't have to push those stories very far in order for them to kind of unfold on stage.
Gosh. Okay. So let's go back. So you left there and how did you get to Texas exactly?
Oh, there's been so many stops along the way, but after Springer, I ended up moving to LA and I worked on a pilot for the Kyoto Brothers Productions. They're like the puppet producers. They did Team America, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So they were like the puppet producers. And I worked on a pilot for them and then it didn't get picked up. It was like a CNN pilot. And then they offered me an executive assistant role. So I went from being a producer, having my own office at NBC, to starting all the way over and answering phones and kind of like trying to work my way back up in LA. But you know what? Look, not everybody would have done that, but I kind of got like a real peek behind the curtain of what does it take to, you know, sell a pilot? What do the accounts payable and receivable on something like that look like? How do you scout locations? How do you do payroll for 200 people? And, you know, it was a family-run special effects animation company. So, you know, one was a producer, one was an editor, director, one was an animator, and it was all hands on deck. I feel like when you work for someone or when you work for a family-run business, like you get to wear a lot more hats than if you take a job in corporate and you're just kind of like do one thing. So I, you know, worked for them on and off for a couple years. And to be honest, they saw that I had stars in my eyes and kind of like still wanted to apply for things on the side. And I remember I got one gig on like a traveling VH1 show for like 6 or 7 weeks. And then I went and worked on that and then it didn't get picked up. And I was like, hey, can I come back and answer phones? And so, but they like, you know, like they were kind of rooting me on. And so I came back, I worked for them for like another year, was like applying to stuff on the side. You know, I really wanted to work in production. And then I got a job as a post-production supervisor for Nanny 911 for 3 years. And they were like, you know, if you leave again, like you're kind of got to spread your wings. So, but it's funny because like I said, I just participated in a documentary over 20 years later of me working on the Springer show. And I called the Kyotos and I was like, hey, I have this opportunity and I just want to talk to you about it. Like, I know you guys have interacted with, you know, the networks and been in the industry a long time. Can I have some words of wisdom here? And so, you know, I know this show is about leadership and I feel like they were amazing leaders because amazing leaders like want to bring up others. You know, they want to make their career. They want to expose them to opportunities that they might not have had otherwise. And I feel like they were the best in that way. Like they hired me as an executive assistant, but they never treated me like that. Like they knew I had been a producer too, you know? So.
Wow. But okay, so you went there, and how did you end up here?
Okay. So I worked in various different roles in Hollywood, and I was there for about 3 years. Like I said, went on to work for Nanny 911 for
Yeah, yeah,
three
yeah.
seasons, and then met my husband online at the third season of that show, and got married, had 3 kids in 5 years.
Wow.
I moved to Silicon Valley. Then he got transferred back to the Midwest in my hometown. And I've kind of honestly like followed my husband's career track because he's always been the corporate guy. And when we moved back to my hometown for a couple of years, it was funny. I had interviewed for a position out in when I was in California, and they had
Right.
flown me to Houston for an interview. And I was like, oh my God, you can get like such a nicer place in Texas, for a much fraction of the price.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't get that post-production supervisor role. And then when we were back in Kentucky, they were looking for somebody in casting for the same show, and they had switched executive producers, and I had stayed in touch with someone. So I ended up getting hired on the same show like 5 years later,
Wow.
back in my hometown. I worked for Judge Alex for like 5 seasons, and I worked in like the research casting department, and I did that for 5 years while my kids were little. So I would like nurse the kids, drop them at the babysitter, go to the courthouse, find the stories, and then pick up the kids. And I still felt like I had kind of kept my foot in the door,
Right. Yeah.
And so I did that for a while. And then I joined corporate America for a bit because we transferred from Kentucky back to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I got like a program manager role, and then a director of communications and marketing role. And then after working, then I left the corporate space and decided to try entrepreneurship, and I'm still doing that. But yeah, so we moved from Chicago, having lived there for a decade, to Texas because my husband was recruited for an oil and gas job, and now he's in aerospace. So I have bounced around really because of him. But my first entrepreneurial opportunity came because I worked for a financial firm in Chicago for a couple of years. And it was my role to kind of plan these like lunch and learn events, which is essentially like knowing how to use social really well and like reaching out to a zillion people on LinkedIn and then getting them to come to your event, like by making them your friend. Right. And so I was like, wow, I can really do that though in any space. Like it doesn't have to be like working for a financial advisor, which I'm not like so crazy about selling like these high-end life insurance products.
Right.
So I ended up working for a couple big podcasters and like women entrepreneur types. One made me a coach in her coaching group, and I was like,
Really?
wow. Yeah. So I went from, the thing is I hired someone off of LinkedIn once my events were like getting bigger than I could manage.
Okay.
So I met her when I was like working for someone else, this girl, Shauna Arnaud. She was planning events for Gary Vee. I don't know if you know who that is, Gary Vaynerchuk.
No, I know the name. I've heard them, but I don't know who he
He's
is.
like a Tony Robbins type, like a big like motivational speaker. So I
love
went
that.
from, like getting 25 people at an event to like 50 to like 75. And then I called her and was like, hey, I know you put on events that are like 2,500 people. How do you do that? And so I helped her book some sponsorships. She just gave me a list of potential sponsors that she would want at her event. And was like, hey, when you get somebody on the line that like wants to close, if you need some help, call me. And then I ended up booking a couple sponsors, and I was like, I guess I do that now. You know?
Yeah. And that's what you do now while you're here, right?
Some I have. Yeah. I just worked on an event here in Texas and got a couple sponsors for that event. And, it was a smaller event, and I've put on one of my own. Aw. I'm seeing Tori's notes come in. But yeah, I do some of that, and I've helped other people get on podcasts, and I'm still doing my own podcast, which I'm releasing weekly, and I've been doing now for 5 years. But this has all come from kind of working for other people and then doing it for myself as well.
Wow. Okay. Good. No, that's awesome. And if people wanted to know more about you, just right off the bat, I'm not selling your services, but I'm selling your services.
Oh.
If they wanted to know more about you or get in contact with you, what's the best way? Through LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's a good way since that's where we're at. But yeah, Reena Friedman Watts, pretty much on any social media, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, also bettercalldaddy.com. Better Call Daddy is the name of my podcast. And I have a Reena at Better Call Daddy.
No. Okay. So how can people listen to your podcast?
Yeah. It's on all major podcasting platforms. I'm working on getting kind of my YouTube up and running because I feel like in this day and age, like everybody is expecting video now as well as audio, which it was not like that 5 years ago. It's
Right.
funny, when I was in Chicago, I helped produce a couple healthcare podcasts,
Hmm.
and one of them was audio only, and I was on that show for 3 years, and just the technology is really caught up now,
Hmm.
where you can do everything simultaneously, and people really, I feel like, are expecting, they ask for it. Like the
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
guests ask for it. They're like, when's the video going to be up?
Uh-huh.
But it's two separate things, really, if you want to, make thumbnails or do any sort of creative intro. Like my show has a lot of pieces. For instance, it has a show intro, it has a show outro. I do a custom intro for each guest. My
Okay.
dad weighs in at the end of every episode with his 2 cents. So it has many pieces. So it's not just record and upload. Some
Right.
people do that. Some people do no editing, but mine has a lot of artistry to it.
Yeah, no, well, this one has no editing. I mean, it's live and it's real. And it's funny that you said this, because one of the other things I want to ask you about, or I want to discuss, was, I mean, you were with Jerry Springer, and one, there's got to be an issue of trust, and one of the big deals with, well, what makes you tick stands for trust, clarity, and traction, and trust is one of the biggest pieces of this show. How, and I guess it's kind of a two-part question, but in your business, how big is trust, number one? And then how does that, you were talking about technology, how does that play into AI and the birth of AI? Is it usable? And does it hurt the trust within the business?
It can.
Yeah, yeah.
It definitely can. And I can tell you, when I first started podcasting, and you're still early on, under 50 episodes.
Uh-huh.
In the beginning, you're just like happy with whoever wants to come on. But it's a political climate that we're in, and I've had some bigger guests now, and I feel like I do a lot more research on who I say yes to. I mean, I'm literally pitched almost every day now.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to have a pre-chat with everyone that I have on now. And I also stalk their social media first. I kind of want to know what they're posting and what other people are posting about them. I mean, I don't know if you do this, but I definitely Google search people most of the time.
Sort of. I mean, I'll look at you on LinkedIn. I really, I mean, look, I'm early on, and everybody, I've been extremely fortunate, because everybody that I've had on, either I've known for a while or I know through the networking. So I've had good conversations and I feel very comfortable with. And honestly, I'll be straightforward. Right now, I look for people's networks. Like James next week. James is going to be one of my guests next week. He's going into politics. He and I met through networking. He doesn't have a very big social network, but because of exactly what you just said, it's a political political conversation. I like him. I would love to be able to promote what he's doing and give him something to help promote himself. So being able to bring him on and have something that evolves around trust, clarity, and traction is great. Although it doesn't fit my normal priority or parameters, which is you got to have a big network, because I don't,
I was on, like, I've deviated kind of from the daddy daughter theme, or, reality TV, or, leadership a couple times. But if I'm going to go on a political show, I definitely don't want any gotcha questions. I kind of want to know your political leanings beforehand. And there are certain things that, to be honest, I have not broached, and I feel like could even be dangerous to talk about. So
Yeah.
I had somebody interview me around what was it like as a mother to find out about Charlie Kirk from your son. And it's crazy how political of a topic that was. And I just said, witnessing that kind of news on a cell phone and having teenagers who are showing that to me was horrifying. Did I get into it from a political view? No, but the show that I chose to go on, I agree with his political views.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and a lot of that was, that was a mess. And what's funny is I'm laughing because normally we would have that conversation, or we would have those conversations but because of my technical idiocy, it didn't work out. So literally, this is probably the most live podcast.
Great. I'm glad I get the most real experience. But that's what makes it fun too.
Yeah.
Like, even though sometimes it's good to have an outline or kind of know what you're getting into or have people pre-vetted, like you gotta leave room for some magic to happen. Like, especially like, if I'm preparing to interview a celebrity, like I'm going to have some questions I want to ask, but I'm also willing to ditch them. And I'm also willing to take turns. And it's funny, I took my Jerry Springer interview. I actually interviewed him 20 years later. So It's one of my favorite episodes. It like totally made my podcast worth it. I was like, oh my God, how am I ever going to follow this up? It was episode 210. So if you get to listening to one episode of my show, that one is amazing. And it was funny. I took that interview. There's a guy, his name is Neal Sullivan. I'm giving him a shout out right now. He's a LinkedIn guy. And he's developing a tool to like take your podcast episodes and give you like AI feedback on like how you can improve it. And he's actually building something called Pod Critic, which I've given him a couple episodes to try with mine. And one thing he said about my interview with Jerry, and you might understand why this happened, is that, Jerry's a political guy. I mean, he was mayor of Cincinnati. He had a podcast of his own where he liked to talk about politics. And I was a bit kind of like went back to the 21-year-old version of myself where I was like, oh my God, star power. I was like intimidated by him all over again. And I let him kind of loose during the interview. Like sometimes I'll rein people in, I'll interrupt a little, I'll get people back on track. But with him, I was like, oh, like I can't believe I'm having this interview. And I think if I would have like either summarized his politics rant or had 2 cents to add to it where I kind of like added my perspective, it would have made it better. But the parts that got the most engagement or that Pod Critic found to be the most interesting were our shared experience. What was it like when I was working with him? Like, what did we experience together? What questions did he have for my dad? Did he like the idea of my podcast kind of being like a tribute to him? So those were the parts that were the most engaging. And he was just saying, like, if I was going to let him loose on the politics side, that I should have either like summarized all of that or like added to it.
Got it. Okay. No, that's awesome. Look, we need to let's do a quick reset. But before we do the reset, I always have my guests talk about books, and I always intro a book, and I'll start today. One of the books that I read. So as a baseball coach, when I was coaching at the Woodlands, we would do an off season. In the off season, we would do different books. And, one of my favorite things was the positive mindset, because anytime you're in athletics or a business, mindset's huge. So the one book that I wanted to spotlight today was called The Hard Hat with John Gordon. And it's a true story about a lacrosse player who had great leadership. He was selfless. He was committed to his teams, and he left a legacy after his death. He died and it just left a legacy. And it's a great book, a very positive story, even though there is death in it. But he does this through a very powerful lesson. And John does a great job of showing the greatness from his discipline, his beliefs, and the commitment to serving others. And he uses it to create a motivational roadmap for anyone that's striving to rise above average and achieve their best. And the three of my favorite takeaways were, one, and this is one of the things that we were really focused on the year we read it, was one, be a great teammate. Two, love drives every performance. No matter what business you're in, love is going to drive it. One of my things that we talked about with a cup of Joey, I think passion, when you connect passion or purpose to what you're doing, you find that love. And then leave a legacy through character, basically that your impact is measured by who you help, how you show up, and the way that you treat others. And it was just a really good positive mindset book, and it set us up for a really good season that year. What about you? What's your book?
Well, I think that the book that I'm thinking of goes along with what you're saying. It's called Trust and Inspire, and it's by Stephen M.R. Covey, who is the son of Stephen Covey. And it talks about how command and control leadership does not work. And boy, have I learned that as a parent.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever tried that technique, but He was
I'll tell you a
saying,
story after you love stories. I'll tell you a story recent after this, but go ahead.
so he was saying like little affirmations, like you've got this,
Hmm.
or, just telling people that you see the greatness in them. And I really believe that because my dad, he says simple things like, I'm glad you're here.
Hmm.
I am so glad you're here. You make my life better.
Hmm.
And that in itself, you have no idea what that has done for me confidence wise. It has given me just like the push to go after my dreams in such a big way. Because I have always felt like no matter what I freaking try, my dad's got my back. Like, no other. And I
Hmm.
feel like the world is really missing that today. Like there are so many people
Yes.
that just need encouragement and need these little affirmations, and just listening to them can
Hmm.
change their entire life. And I've seen it. I've interviewed over 450 people. Like
Wow.
it's unbelievable how people have opened up to me just from listening.
Yeah, no, and it's look, you're exactly correct. I want to come back to that point, but look, today is my 28th podcast, and it's called "What Makes You Tick," which is an authentic, relaxed, purposeful conversation about trust, clarity, and traction. You're getting really an honest one right here today. Why? Because we want to incorporate your purpose in everything we do and why you do it, and be able to help your lives and help other lives. How are we going to do this? We're going to still share business stories, personal stories on building culture of trust, creating a clear, impactful message for leaders, and with the insight of how this can build traction within your life. My guest today is Reena Watts, and we're just having an authentic conversation about everything from, look, you're talking about kids with how they're reacting and understanding. One, look, I had to go back to teaching 2 years ago, and I would love to be able to move into something else from it. I was in a spot where I had to go back to teaching because I couldn't find a job, and the business that we had built didn't work out. And I just, for whatever reason, actually, I have my own personal thoughts of why I didn't get, but it just didn't. And I didn't do a good enough job finding one. So I went back to teaching. And last year was fantastic. I see a bunch of my kids. I had some high level kids. This year's different. I'm challenged to teach kids that I've never taught before at a different level and socioeconomic and just different things about them. So I'm having to learn, and being able to find that positive, what you're talking about, that positive message is difficult. So I don't know if you know how well this year they passed the law that you can't have phones in school.
Oh, yes. I'm a mom of four, and they
Uh-huh.
love to complain about that rule.
It's a great, and look, there's other things that they could have done better for it because it puts us in a spot. And I've had 3 kids this year, and I don't understand this mindset, but I've had 3 kids walking in the hall. One of them was in the classroom, had their phone out. I said something. They looked at me like, what? I said, okay, then give me your phone, because I always give them a chance. I had them tell me, no, I'm not giving you my phone. I went, what? That's
Was
like,
that my kid?
no, it wasn't your kid. But I mean, I'm like, where's the respect? I'm not taking your phone because it's not something I really want to do. But it's this thing with respect and understanding, and there's a disconnect there, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And the
And
thing is like, there's a fine line between like being friends with them, but also like doing your job.
yeah, yeah,
And that's a really hard thing, probably about leadership too.
yes, I would agree.
When I was a new manager, I sucked. I was so bad. I was like, look, I am new to this producer role. Like I went through 7 associate producers in 1 year because I was like, you know what? If they can't book a story, I'm going to book it. I'm going to write it. I'm going to brief it. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to do the budget, knock on my door when you have a story. But the thing is that is not sustainable.
correct. No,
It is not.
not for you. You'll pull, your hair will look like mine.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely touching up the grays, but
No, I'm talking about the lack of.
oh yeah, it is thinning too. But that's the thing. You've got to figure out how to build the team around you and bring out people's strengths where you're not continually revolving the door of people working for you. It's tough. It's really tough.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like I'm still learning that.
No. And look, one of the topics that I really want to dig into more because I've found a fascination with it, and it's AI. And, you know, we already mentioned it once, but as far as some of the challenges you're seeing today, are you seeing any on your side?
Oh God. I get such bad AI pitches. Sometimes I'm like, I'm literally going to take their bad AI pitch and just AI respond to that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Or on the flip side, I'll just respond to it like a human and see if they're going to respond to me again with AI or if that will bring the human out of them. But here's where AI just is not working is with customer service.
Yeah, I agree.
I
I see the same
cannot
thing. Yeah.
stand that. And I will go to a doctor's office and pay more money if they answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Same with dentist,
Mm-hmm.
same with any service provider. I like a person to answer the phone, and I also still only take on the amount of clients where I can answer the phone for them.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, whenever you like, it's good if it directs you quickly and it gets you out of it. But when you start having a conversation with it, I sometimes you go, what am I doing? But what about in your business, in what you do, and in the realm that you're in outside of that? Are you seeing it? Are you seeing people worried about it? Are you seeing people accepting it? I mean, is there anything that you're seeing outside of just your regular everyday?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook group with almost 800 people in it, and I recently asked them about AI and what they
Hmm.
think. And I would say for the most part, like people don't trust it. But you know what's funny? I a lot of times if I don't have time to like pick a custom clip or to fix it the way I like it, like I'll just use CapCut, which allows you to just like it has a lot of templates and it has where you can upload a selfie or a
Hmm.
behind the scenes shot and then it'll animate it or it'll do an AI scene. Like I did one of my kid being chased by a turkey for Thanksgiving and people love that. Or, I'll upload a picture of me and my husband from a holiday party and then it'll like make a 40s edition of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What people, I'm telling you though, they don't know that it's not real because it starts with a real picture and then
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
animation of it, people love that. So in that regard, I think it's fun. But as far as relying on AI to rewrite your intros, I don't know about you, but I can tell when people use AI for their intros. I can tell
Right.
when people
Okay.
use AI for their reach outs. I can tell when PR firms, aren't putting my name.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And it's funny because there still has to be AI is fantastic. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things that you can do, but there still has to be that human interest and human connection. One, I think if you're running a business or you're doing something within a business, or for me, like school, being able to have that human interaction is still huge, but use it as a tool. If you can find a way to use it as a tool to help your people, not take them away or replace them, I think it becomes a better advantage. And the one thing that I've loved, because I've been digging in, I've got like, I'll have Christmas break at the end of this week. I've got 2 weeks. I'm going to dig into a lot because I want to learn. That's the other piece. I've used AI to write stuff, to read stuff, to research, to do a lot of different things, and I can download like one of the books I'm listening to right now. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to go run. And when I
Nice.
run, I listen to a book and I have my audio open and I record my thoughts or what I'm doing. I took it last week and uploaded it into my chapter, and it created a great outline that I'm going, okay, I would read that. I'm not going to read my own notes, but being able to use this was something that I could use. So that allows me to learn. The fear that I have is people use it, copy, paste, done. And
Oh, they
that's,
definitely do. They
what are you
definitely
posting?
do.
You have to be able to put your own personality in there because that comment or whatever you're posting represents you.
You have to edit. And that's the thing too. Like there's all these like AI, there's Descript, there's Riverside. You still have there's Headliner app. I love all of these tools, but it still requires a once over. I would say it's like 90% there as far
Mhm.
as the transcript, but it has misspellings or it doesn't talk in your voice and get 90% there but also do that extra 10% of personalization down to earthness where
Yes.
you actually make it you.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it absolutely does. And based on a comment that I remember you saying, or that I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it says something like I connect with game changers and sometimes it requires breaking down doors. Isn't that your theory?
100%. and creating your own doors.
Yeah, and AI can, but you still have to be able to get out there and you have to be present. And like, so if you're looking for a potential client, what does all that mean?
For me, it means, one, do they have the budget? Two, do I, have I background searched them where I would actually want to put my name on them? Because I feel like a lot
Yeah,
of the work that I do is kind of like public work. Like if I sign on to market someone's event and I'm putting it all over my social media, I am essentially endorsing that person. So
right,
you have to decide, like, is that someone who you want to put your name on?
right. Okay, now, and you talked about storytelling. How does storytelling come into that, all of that? Are you able to tell their story, or do you listen to how do you make all that work when you
Oh yeah,
represent somebody?
that's a good a good question. Yeah, it requires a lot of getting together with them in person, kind of listening to their podcast. Again, like who is recommending them, what's their track
Hmm, hmm,
record. It's
hmm.
not just can I do this, but do I want to do this?
Right. And what exactly do you do for them?
I mean, as a freelance marketer, I've helped people launch their podcast. I've co-hosted shows.
Uh-huh.
I've helped other people get on podcasts. I've marketed events. It's kind of just like all of those skills that I have.
And it helps to, I mean, your goal is to obviously build their podcast for them,
Yeah.
or at least be able to make it profitable. Is that right? Is that,
I
or
mean,
impactful?
I would probably lean more towards impactful
Okay.
and setting them up where they feel confident in being able to manage it on their own or go forward with it.
Yeah. And I would say that you're probably an expert in all of that. What about technical?
Well, I have to say something that's pretty cool that I discovered over the last year because to be honest, I was like renting studios around Houston
Yeah.
for part of, last year and the previous year.
Uh-huh.
And the library has like this tech link. The Tech Link libraries in Houston are such an amazing, honestly, free resource. So if somebody doesn't want to rent a studio, they have 4K cameras, they have a Rodecaster mixer, they have Rode mics, and all you got to do is take an hour class and then you can book up to a couple hours a day at the library. And I think interviewing people in person is just like next level as far as building trust and,
Hmm.
upping the quality of your recording and, taking it to the next level. So we should do that. We should actually like go meet at one of these Tech Link studios and I can show you how to work the camera and how to work the mixer. And, you said you wanted to learn some things over the
I
winter
do.
break. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I do. I need to figure out where I'm going with this. I enjoy doing the podcast, and what am I going to do? I don't want to keep teaching. This teaching thing is starting to wear me out. So if I can find something that would allow me to do that more often and to be able to access that, absolutely. I would
I
love to
mean,
do
you
that.
would be surprised. I've had people literally leave their corporate jobs and want to meet me at the library because I can make them something very
Hmm.
professional that
Hmm.
way.
Interesting.
And
Hmm.
they also have like Premiere Pro. You could even take like a Premiere Pro class and, you can create some fancier graphics instead of just the ones that AI creates for you. But
Yeah.
one of my favorite, I'm going to shout them out, Headliner app, Eddie by Headliner is one of my go-to tools. I mean, there's a free version of it and it creates audiograms. You can create videograms now. It transcribes everything. I love their customer service. They're very reachable. They will get on, a call with you. They'll show you how to use their tool. They can help grow your audience too. So I would highly recommend adding that to your stack.
Huh. Interesting. I'm gonna have to get that information from you after we're done.
I'll introduce you to their
Yeah.
marketing person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had them on my podcast. I love that tool. And again, like I said, customer service for me trumps sometimes capabilities. Like I would say that their tool is 90% there, and it doesn't take a lot of tweaking to be awesome. It's
Huh.
just, yeah, it's definitely something I use like almost on every episode.
That's awesome. And if you could pick one thing in your life, would this be what you would say I'm an expert at?
I could literally interview people all day, every day, and still get joy from it.
Yeah.
But how I've kept that up is a couple of things. I mean, I would encourage you to continue to go after guests that you want, people that interest you. Like, you're going to get pitched all day long, sprinkle that in, but continue to like reach for people that like really excite you. Because there's a big difference between going after people you want versus who wants you.
Right.
So that's one thing. I mean, I have reached out to people that I have felt like are a stretch for me to interview, to connect with, to prepare for. Oh my God, I got like literally a nervous wreck interviewing Jerry, even though I worked for him. You know, I listened to him give a commencement speech. I listened to his podcast. I listened to him, you know, all over social media. I really wanted to find a unique angle. And I kept in touch with his publicist for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I would say, yeah, so interview people that you love, continue to learn new tools, and then find an encourager. That goes back to the trust and inspire thing. Like, find somebody who's like, Bryan, you are freaking good at this. Don't quit. You need like at least hearing that once a week.
Yeah. That would be nice to hear at least once a week from somebody.
Like, know who your people are and like tell them, check in with me. I need some gratitude messages or something. Like,
yeah. That's the other thing. Look, teaching's done great for my life, but being around kids and the situation, you don't hear that much. And but the cool thing is, I go, look, I've got a podcast. They go, what? You've got a podcast? Yeah. It's on YouTube. Just take a look, or Spotify. You can find it. Yeah. And
isn't that the coolest? I mean, I will say too, the reason not to quit is that, like, if you have a podcast, like I just interviewed this chick, she's like a freaking world champion of power slap. And I saw on her Instagram that she had a daddy story. To be honest, she lost the championship, and then her dad had a stroke and he was in the hospital. I think this is the right order. And she was like, I made a commitment to you, Dad, like that I was going to take this judo thing into the end, that I was going to take this power slap thing to the end. And she was like, I'm going to get that championship back for you. And she did before he passed away.
Wow.
And I understand, as an oldest daughter, what that is like to want to make your father proud. And probably that could, you know, help me lift a car or a man or slap somebody across the face. Like,
that's hilarious. No, I love that. Look, let me do my look. If you've ever been a watch of this, I have several resets and I never hit my time because I just want to have a conversation. But I do want to thank everybody for listening to my podcast, What Makes You Tick. Reena and I are having an authentic, purposeful conversation on trust, clarity, and traction. If you have any questions or comments, which we've got a couple from Regina and Tori that are popping in, we'd love to hear from anybody. Any engagement is important. Reena, what in our discussion would you say is a good takeaway for our audience so far?
Meet people in real life. I see Tori even saying that, you know, she did this at a place that, you know, and it needs to be a mix between like connecting with people online and like honing those skills that you want to get better at. I mean, interviewing people is such a good skill to have. Actually, that's even part of why I wanted to start in the first place. I mean, I was working for other podcasters, but not only is it going to help you with like interviewing and speaking, but it also helps you with accountability and staying on a schedule and delivering something once a week and being able to roll with the punches when, you know, the tech doesn't work. Like, it really makes you a better human by creating something, by doing something creative, by having a project where you're continually like working on your skills, whether it's Toastmasters, whether it's podcasting, whether it's trying a new instrument. Like, you've got to sharpen your skills. You've got to hone your skills. So I would say meet people in real life, find a passion, and like do something every day towards that passion that makes you better at it.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And all the people that you've interviewed and been around, I know that there's got to be some that have like pushed, you know, either a person or an event that's kind of opened your mind and even unexpectedly opened your mind, especially through testing your trust and clarity within your life. Do you have anybody that comes to mind that really kind of opened, or an event that opened your mind as far as it really pushed what you believed in trust and clarity?
I loved my interview with Stephen Covey. In fact, I've interviewed him twice
Hmm.
because I was so inspired by him. And it also reminds me of another guy, Felipe. He has an engineering podcast. They both had famous fathers. And living up to someone else's greatness and, kind of developing your own brand is an interesting thing. Like, I feel like from having a podcast with my dad, there's like two schools of thought. You either like
Hmm.
admire your father and want to be like them and want to kind of like take things from them and include that in your legacy, or you have a dad that you want, to do the opposite of,
Yeah.
and you want to be better than what you didn't receive. I feel like there's those two. And yeah, I really have been inspired by people that have like great dads, and because I can relate to that so much, but then
Hmm.
have kind of still tried to forge their own path,
Right.
but it's still kind of tied to the legacy that came before them. I always like, and this ties back to Cup of Joey, right? I never really knew what my legacy was or like what my why was, but my dad has always seemed like so sure of his. He's like, I'm here from the, for the generation that came before me and the
Yep.
generation after.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm glad you're so sure. Maybe I should make that mine. You know what I mean?
But you can't unless you have, unless it really connects to what's inside of you and it comes out naturally. It's just making something up. It's not real.
Right. So I feel like I've taken a piece of that, but at the same time, like, I feel like part of my legacy is honestly just like all of the souls that have like come my way. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm taking more notice of that. And it's
Hmm.
like, how can I help them like craft this story that they're trusting with me? Like, I feel
Right.
like that's part of my legacy. Like, I look back and I feel like every one of these episodes that I've done, like I've poured my heart and soul into. And you know what's crazy? I feel like my dad's reaction to each interview that I've done is like a gift to them and a gift to me.
Yeah. No, look, it's funny because being in sports, that's the easiest one for me to go to because as a coach here in the Woodlands and just recently, the coolest thing are the kids that you see and the ones that you never know that you made an impact on.
Ooh,
And being able to
yes.
see, like I've already had a couple of my former players on because of the success they've done. One of my former players sold my house last year when I sold it. And I want to give back, and it's really cool to be able to connect with them. And this year, I have kids that come in my room from last year that'll come and just to come visit me. And it's even though I'm busy or I may feel busy, I want them to take time out because you don't get that honor. You don't know when you have that opportunity to make an impact in somebody's life and being able to do that on a daily basis. Same thing in business. I mean, when I was in, I would have never guessed based on when we started our business, based on my business development, everything that we were doing before, I didn't know those skills would apply into what we did with Cup of Joey and the networking. I never saw myself in that until I was in that. God, and I miss it. I miss the interaction of the people. I miss this getting to know the people's story and everybody's different stories. And this is a platform that allows me to put people that we meet, people that you may not normally see, and be able to present their story and what they do and what makes them tick, because that's the name of the show. But if being able to show everyday people's story and how impactful they can be in other people's lives, it's great.
Oh, yeah. I can relate to that so much. One of my, I feel like my most proud moments is I was helping produce this healthcare podcast, and one of the guests on that show I knew from like working at that financial firm that I was talking
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
And he got kind of nervous on the healthcare show because it was like a lights, camera, action, like kind of a production in person shoot. And I was like, you know what? I told the host, I was like, let's stop down for a minute, turn off the lights, turn off the cameras. And I was like, just sit here and like, let's hash out your story. Cause I know the cameras can like be distracting.
Hmm.
And so I like helped him tell his story. And then after that, like after we turned the lights and the cameras and everything back on, it ended up turning out well. And then that guy hired me to help him because he was sponsoring like a big nonprofit event in
Yeah.
town. And he needed like a minute and a half trailer to kind of be on loop, when people walked into the event. And he
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
brought me to his business, had me like help him craft like his personal story and his business story. And he trusted me just to bring in a camera guy and edit that together for him. And then I don't know, maybe like a year or so later, he was like giving a keynote at some other conference and like shared that with me. And I was like, I remember when we had to stop down the camera and do a couple jumping jacks together and take some deep breaths and like, make that segment turn out good. And nothing gave me more joy than being able to like help him create something that he felt comfortable with and proud of, and then hire me back to bring me into his office separately. And now to see him speaking on a stage, like I somehow felt a part of that. You know what I mean? I was like, I am so proud of you. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, we've had guys that go pro, and I like the first kid I taught here when I first moved up north side. I lived on the south side for a year and I moved up here on the north side. And one of the first groups I had of seventh graders, we had one of them that is coaching in pro baseball, like at the major league level. We have another one who played in the NFL. That was my and I love talking about those kids. I had this much influence on them. But being able to see what they did and how they did it and being a part of their life is an honor for me. And that was just from the first year I started. We've had many that I've been blessed with getting to know and that have gone on to play pro ball or have been, been very successful outside of their athletics and gone on and used that to create a great business, which is one of my biggest impacts, I think, is that if you find you need to hire somebody and they have an athletic background, dig in a little bit, because that person generally has something special and a different perspective that may be an advantage to your own business if you're looking to hire them.
I love that you have interviewed some of those players that have seen you in a different light. And I actually always tell people when they're starting a podcast, like, interview somebody you went to college with, interview a client that you had a positive experience with, because they can talk about that and help document that time in your life. Like I've now interviewed the Kyoto brothers who gave me my first job in LA. I've interviewed Judge Alex, who I worked on that for 5 seasons. I interviewed one of the nannies from Nanny 911 because I wanted to know what it was like from their perspective in the time that we spent together. But at the same time, I've also, interviewed people from when I was a group coach in one of those podcasters, coaching groups. It's like, who is God sending your way? And how can they help tell the story of the time that you've spent together in a different way? It helps you document it. You're going to just feel instantly more comfortable with those people. And you never know how deepening those connections can build upon them.
And it creates a different perspective from your own eyes, but also from people that you may know, and they see a different view of you and go, especially if you're putting it out there for the world to see like this. We're looking at it. People may look at me differently that I knew a long time ago, or helping you out the same thing. I've met her doing this, blah, 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 but now I've never had that conversation before. That's a great thing. Look, I know we're getting pretty close we got about another 6-7 minutes left. And it's perfect that you said that. One of the things that I always want to end is advice. The first piece is you've been able to chase your dreams. What would you tell people or what advice would you give somebody, young, old, it doesn't matter, that they're chasing their dreams and they want to turn it into reality? What advice would you give them?
Reach higher than you think you can. Because I just reached out to that chick. She gets 44 million views. Wow. Sheena Bathory on some of her clips. Like, I think our clip together that got like 22,000 was like one of her least viewed. I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. It only got 22,000. But you know what? Like, she had never told her daddy's story before. Yeah. And she loved that I had a whole podcast around that. You just never know. Like, I reached out to Roseanne Barr and, Katie Couric. I read Katie Couric's book and then reached out. She said no, but I mean, I'm going to ask her again. She follows me now. She follows me on Instagram. You know what? She might not come on my podcast, but she now follows me. I would say reach further than you think that you're capable of, and continue to push yourself. Get nervous.
Yeah. Get uncomfortable with being comfortable, or get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Get nervous. Get bold, because the best opportunities are going to come from that.
Okay, so that one's easy. What about, me being with the youth, and you've got kids? How what's your youngest? How young is your youngest?
6,
Okay, so you got one that's 6. How old is your oldest?
17.
Okay, yeah. So mine are, gosh, mine just, my 3 are gone. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing with my life right now. It's so weird. My kids have been gone, and I'm like, I find days like, what am I going to do? But as far as, me being around the younger generation, I think trust and clarity are huge in their lives. And I think being able to understand, look, most of our kids trust without really understanding what trust is, or they do the opposite and they won't trust because they're afraid to. But if you were giving advice to our younger generation on trust and clarity, what would you give them, and how important that is?
It's funny because my daughter just walked in and she's ready for a ride to basketball. What would I tell them? That it's about balance. It's about, you know, kind of trying to be well-rounded where you get to go to basketball, you get to go to shopping, but also I'm a person too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've had trouble with boundaries with in life. And um something's got to give.
Yeah, absolutely. I, you
You
know, I-
know, like I want to be a great mom. I take my daughter to concerts and I take her late to Target and
Mhm,
I
mhm,
try to get the teacher's presence, but also sometimes I want to record a podcast and sometimes I need to get my hair cut and sometimes
mhm.
I need to go to the gym. And you know what? You can give a little bit of pushback. I think it's good to teach them that too.
It has to look, you really, I agree. You have to set boundaries. You absolutely have to set boundaries, because sometimes, and look, that was a difficult thing for me. But I find that it's two things. Our kids now, especially the ones that I'm teaching or integrate, one, they make up their minds before they really have the whole story. And they want to be able to put stuff in there. Two, like if I correct my own kids do this too, but I see a lot of kids, you go to correct them or you go to give them some advice, and then all of a sudden they already have an idea of what you're about to say. So they make a judgment before you've said anything. And I'm like, wait a second. Like one of the kids that I had, he wasn't give me his phone, and he was testing. And I looked at him and I go, okay, here's the deal, dude. And I tried to not bargain with him, but I gave him 3 chances. Then the third time I looked at him and go, look here, dude, here's the chance. You either have option number 1, which is where I write you up and I take your phone anyway, or you give it to me, or you have to get a referral, or you give me your phone and I put it here, take it away from the test, and you get it back at the end of class without a referral. Which choice do you want? But he had in his mind that he wants to argue and stand up. But being able to stand for yourself and who you really are. I make a mistake. My bad. My bad. I got it. Those things I think create a huge amount of trust and clarity, because people understand who you are. And I think sometimes we're afraid to, not to let me rephrase that. I think a lot of times we're afraid to do that because we're so worried about what people would think. It doesn't matter. I saw something today said it doesn't matter. One of the biggest moments of this thing I saw was this video I saw. He was talking about how he had to do some meditation and stuff when he realized that it removed the emotion. It's not about what you think. It's really about who I am. It allowed him to find a lot of clarity within his life. I was like, huh, that's pretty cool. So, look, I know you've got to run because you've got to take somebody to basketball. Yes.
Yes.
No. So do I. I've got to go run myself. Look, please find my friend. It's been a great conversation. We'll have the show. We'll post it on LinkedIn, YouTube, and I'll also post it later on Spotify. Right now, you'll find it on LinkedIn or YouTube. Look for the post later after my run. I'll post it on Spotify. Reena, please share anything on LinkedIn or the best way that our audience can get in contact with you.
Thank you so much for having me. You can find me on social at Reena Friedman Watts or at bettercalldaddy.com.
No, awesome. Look, thank you for being my guest and agreeing to come on this little bitty podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, look, let's make an impact on our lives today and our community through trust, clarity, and traction. Let's be transitional over transactional. You can find me on LinkedIn to stay connected for future episodes or deeper conversations. Reena, it's been amazing. Please find my friend and connect with her. Join me next week when my guest, James Hollian, and we will discuss his path through politics and that he's running for municipal judge in Conroe. Should be and I'm not a political guy, but I really trust this guy. And I think it'd be great to interview and have a conversation with him. Look, go and have a fantastic week. See you.
Thank you.